And Martins is taking over. He has a wonderful Latvian, beautiful male name, Martins, like myself. I'm also Martins.
The
so
geese will be killed soon, 10th of November, Martins.
Thank you.
Hi, hello, good afternoon, everybody. Hope your coffee break was productive as the whole day so far. So, selling your product, selling film in different channels. The topic that is pretty blank for me. Ability to ask stupid questions, maybe that's why I'm here. Anyway, I will ask people who are much more in the topic here on the stage. They are Andreas, G, Janis, and Michael. Please, here on the stage, and then we'll do some small introduction while discussion. Yes, so if everybody is ready, are we ready? We are. So let's start with some introduction. Please tell me your name again, like full name and the area you are into. Let's start with you, Michael.
Okay, I'm Michael Werner from Stockholm, Sweden, and my company is EYEWELL. I've been a sales agent since the late 1980s. It's quite a while, so I have been through this transfer from the old style distribution, where we had the sack of films once a year, at that time with a Nordisk film, what then later became Trust Nordisk, as you know. And everything had sort of a clear patterns. I mean, it was the windows, it was the theatrical, it was the home entertainment, it was the pay TV, and then the free TV and with the different black windows. Later on, I then moved to non-stop sales. That became part of the Millennium Media Group. That was then acquired by Turner Broadcasting. And at that time, this was in 2010, 2012, 13, the digital transformation became very dramatic. And ever since, I mean, this is when the working model really changed for sales agents, I would say, going from this analog to the totally digital world.
Yes, we'll talk about this a bit later. G.
Hi, my name is G.Thomas Esmay, but I'm quite enjoying the Latvian hospitality today, so I think we can be quite informal and just call me G. But I work at Breaker as Director of Corporate Strategy. I feel as though I'm maybe an odd man out when it comes to panelists today. We're a technology startup. We're based in New York and Zug in Switzerland, and we're using blockchain technology as part of film distribution. We've done a little bit of a bunch of different things, like probably many startups have to date, including building our own transactional video on demand portal called Breaker, which is available in desktop beta right now. We've produced a couple of original films that we've self-distributed, but perhaps the part that we're most interested in and how we're leveraging the technology is to use blockchain, specifically smart contracts, in order to automate revenue management and royalty disbursement when it comes to titles on our transactional video on demand platform.
Thank you, G. Janis representing local.
Hi, everybody.
Platform.
I'm Janis. I'm local. I'm the product owner of our local OTT service called Shortcut. Basically, we have an OTT service which offers TV and VOD services. And well, as Michael mentioned, we're digital.
Yes, Andreas.
Hello. Thank you all for having me here. First, a little correction. I'm actually not the vice president of EUROVOD anymore. We had a vote, and I'm a board member. So just quickly on EUROVOD. EUROVOD is the lobby group of European video on demand platforms. We currently represent approximately 30 VOD services with a little over 1 million subscribers and a couple of million transactional customers. The idea is to gain traction both in the political field and then in mutualizing tech acquisition and marketing. On a second part, I'm the executive director of 2 companies. One is EYZ, which was announced. EYZ is a tech company. We're developing components and full systems for video on demand. And then we have another company, Content Scope, where we currently run 3 VOD services in Germany. Realize.de is for independent film, Universine.de is for arthouse film, and La Cinetech.de is for classics. And we are currently fusing these platforms into a new platform which will launch in January, and you'll see that roll out in a couple of other European territories as we are in the phase of establishing a trans-European video demand service. Yeah, that's it.
So let's talk about these obviators, pretty difficult ones for those who hear them for the first time, like OTT and VOD. What is VOD, video on demand? Could you please be more specific about this?
Yes, gladly. So video on demand in the very basic sense is the delivery of audiovisual content via digital technology to various devices. Then there's OTT, which is the abbreviation of over the top, which is the device classes desktop, mobile, and smart TV. And then there's the other device class, which you might know as ISP, which is you deliver through a telco or like through a broadcaster's system, etc. So then there's a couple of different ways of delivery, starting with TVOD, which is transactional. You pay a fee for 48 or 72 hours of digital rental. There's EST, which is electronic sell-through, which is the purchase of digital goods, though normally it just means infinite usage of a stream. Then there's SVOD, which is a subscription VOD service. That's Netflix, Amazon Prime, and many others, which is a subscription model. And then there's other models like AVOD, which is advertised-based VOD, which is, for example, YouTube or Hulu, very much known. And then last but not least, there's FVOD, which is free VOD. But when we say free in the Western economy, there's always a hook.
Okay, I'm pretty confused already so far. There is another word, there is a blockchain. G, could you please talk about blockchains and why should filmmakers care about this technology?
Sure. Just for my own edification, if I could just get like a show of hands, how many people in the room are already familiar with blockchain as a term, feel confident they could define it? Okay, not great. You guys are actually generally better than the US, though. I find that Europeans are a bit more knowledgeable about blockchain. Not as great as a lot of people in Asia, where it seems to be more of a topic of conversation. But blockchain, put simply, is simply distributed ledger technology, which might not sound particularly radical, but when you start to take it to its logical conclusion, it gets quite interesting. Blockchain's been popularized by its first use, cryptocurrency. So perhaps if I said something like Bitcoin, that would sound more familiar to the people in this room. But what Bitcoin proposed is that perhaps we don't need to rely on trusted third parties like banks to provide us of that list of who owns what when. What if we could decentralize that and instead move our trust into mathematics and computer software so that we wouldn't have to rely on these sorts of institutions? Now, like many people, I'm sick to death of all the news about Bitcoin, especially reporting just on, oh, it's up, it's down. Who really cares? I think the more interesting thing with this particular technology is this notion of distributed lists of who owns what when potentially has much wider reaching applications that is relevant in film and media. For example, you've got people experimenting with things like provably unique digital collectibles is something in the space. It was sort of a joke at first because it was launched in the form of crypto kitties, so provably unique cat images that you could buy and own. But you have some good friends of mine work at a company called Snark.art, which is doing some very interesting things in the film space. They're posing this idea of what if you could buy a single pixel of a film and actually own that unique pixel. So interesting experiments for what art might look like in the future. It's also useful for things like supply chain tracking, useful for ensuring perhaps reconciling contracts and ensuring that the differences and modifications made to those contracts are tracked and clearly audible to all of the participants. And then from Breaker's perspective, the use case that we're particularly interested in film is the one that I mentioned earlier, where we're using a smart contract system in order to manage revenue and payouts. Basically, simply how that would work is you have a smart contract, which is kind of a dumb name for this thing. Some computer developers came up with it. But it's a self-executing line of code that exists on this distributed list. So if this self-executing line of code is programmed so that it knows, hey, the director's supposed to get this much, your investors are owed this amount, depending on what the splits look like, it can receive money in the form of cryptocurrency, and then at the moment that it receives that, it can turn around and pay out all of the participants in real time. Obviously, there's a lot of complex business logic that needs to be built in order to make sure that that fully functions robustly. But it's something that I think is very exciting, as I hope it will get more artists and investors in film paid more accurately and more efficiently.
Yes, thank you. Michael, could you please compare what was sales agent's job 5-10 years ago and nowadays? Has it changed? Because everything is going on very rapidly.
Yes. I would say 10 years ago it was, it started to change. And now the sales agent's role has become much more of a consultant to the producer. When I started a long time ago, we had ready films. Now we read scripts at very early stage. We come on board and we advise the producer what to do, what works, what can be done at an early stage in order to adapt the production to the different markets and to really identify the selling points, the marketing points, and what can be done in order to sort of attract the market the best way, and also to make festival plans, if it is a festival film or not. Sometimes certain films go better with certain sales agents than others, and typically festival-driven films are mostly better off with some kind of sales agents because they have the setup and they have the organization for it, and also the contact network. And certain, if festivals, they come once a year normally, so depending on when your film will hit the market, it can be wise to have maybe a sales agent that has strong connection to that starting festival that you have. Let's say if you like to go to Cannes, it makes sense to be in the hands of a French sales agent.
So sales agent is now participating in early version of script writing and consulting directors and producers.
Yes, it can very much so.
What do producers and directors say about this?
Well, they appreciate it very much. For example, now the new film that we saw here in the opening, The Blizzard of Souls, is a film that I will work with. And I've been in contact with the producers and the director. And what is now happening, it will be a local version and it will be an international version. And because this the national version is like a 2 hour, and the international version will be 100 minutes, and it will be more straight to sort of the action and certain elements that will not be part, of course, in the international version. Because the sensitive thing with the film in the beginning is to keep the audience. I mean, they have to be absorbed in the first 10 minutes. Otherwise, especially when it comes to television and to buyers, the buyers will sometimes just leave the screening, because this is a very brutal reality when you are selling your film at market screenings in Berlin or in Cannes or where it might be. They want to have something that they know that the audience later on will be attracted to. So we are sort of the gatekeepers for the later market elements, where the films and productions need to prove themselves to reach the final audience.
Janis, could you please spread the shortcut experience?
Well, it's pretty easy because, 10 years ago, nothing happened like it for OTT. So basically people, it started to happen, but it wasn't actually like it is now, because when people probably 10 years ago wanted something, they went out and rented a DVD, well, at least in Latvia. 5 years ago, it was, we didn't, it's actually quite similar story. We didn't take part in the content, and then we just were happy if there, for example, local content came in. We were pretty happy to receive it. We just made some remarks, and now we try to be more like a partner to the producer or the director, because, the local OTT services, I think everywhere has a lot of data on what people are watching and what they see, so they can turn these data into insights. And these insights can help make actually I wouldn't say the movie a success, I would say a little bit more successful. So yeah, I think that's partnerships.
G, do you have something to add?
No, none particular. I mean, I'm very interested in, I guess, tracking this, the progress of OTT platforms. We were chatting a little bit earlier about some of the ones and why perhaps they hadn't able to gain a foothold in Latvia just yet, and why Shortcuts was uniquely positioned. But I'm, like I said, I'm curious to track where all of these platforms are going. We mentioned sort of a variety of business models before, with the proliferation of subscription services, still some reliance on the transactional model. And to me, that's a really interesting question that perhaps hasn't come up yet today, is what ultimately will work, or what combination of things will work. When we were chatting about Netflix, it's interesting to look at this sort of ubiquitous, rapidly globalized platform, and yet it's a company that's not profitable. And so this issue of sustainability on a massive distributor level, I think is something interesting to explore, versus perhaps a more localized service, which can be a little bit more sustainable because it knows the market and it caters to the audience here.
Let's be honest, we have to be.
That's a good point. That's how you're able to compete.
Well, I mean, I think the models, at least throughout Europe, I mean, I can't really say in the US or so. I mean, I think throughout Europe, I think we all know it's the same split in all the countries. I think 80%, 85% of all the VOD revenues is raked in by American-operated entities. It's normally the big three. which is Netflix, Amazon, and then the third one is like either Sky or sometimes it's Canal Plus or something like that. So I think, in terms of the models, I think SVOD is obviously the driver, though one can see that SVOD is leveling off. So there seems to be a certain saturation, which now will be even more of an issue with Apple Plus and Disney Plus and Warner coming in, HBO already being there. And I think what, for example, we are trying to achieve or we are trying to address is, it's always a numbers game. I mean, you can look at it in each country, I would say, again, it's not only 80% is American and 20% is maybe others, but you could say 80% is mainstream and 20% is what's either a bit derogatively called niche, or you could call it specialized, or you could call it, I like to call it segment VOD. So that's what we are targeting. And then if you look at the numbers, for example, in Germany, there's 2 billion in home video to be made. 50% out of that is already digital, so that's 1 billion, out of which 20% is approximately what you could to attribute art house. So that's 400 million. So that's a big market, and that's what we try to accomplish with other platforms. Not really challenging mainstream, because I think like if Netflix is sustainable or not, it's like, is Spotify sustainable, is Facebook sustainable, is Twitter sustainable? It doesn't really matter. I mean, there'll always be money flowing that way, and we will not really be able to change it. The last one who tried to change it was Vivendi, and they sunk like nearly $1 billion in Germany alone, and then went out of business with their whatever service. So, but I think there's a lot of revenue to be made in that non-mainstream market. And I think what I really liked about the earlier speakers was that some of them pointed out that it is to have stories that say something about yourself, to have European stories, to have a European perspective, to take into account that at least those 15–20% of the users feel a bit of unease of getting served all quality through an American filtering. Because even, I think I would go too far to say, even if you look at a Netflix original, if you look at Dark, that's not made, it's made in Germany, and a lot of Germans pat themselves on the shoulder that, you know, they finally landed something that they sold to the US. But in the end, I mean, if you look at it, it's an American filtering, and there's an American view and an American ideology, and it's, you know, data. I mean, because Netflix will look at their own like core audience. It's like, and they have to say, well, it has to sell to in the Midwest. So then in the end, that's what it looks like. So I think a lot of us Europeans are uneasy about that filtering, and a lot of our Europeans are unaware of the fact that our own market is actually bigger. You know, that's the fun thing about it. You know, like we have actually, there's more Europeans than there's Americans, and so I think it's time for us to put ourselves on the map, and I think that's what some of us are trying to do. I guess that was kind of incoherent, you know, but hope you got it, what I said.
Okay, I have a question. What are the ways of testing the ideas? How can you tell, like, this product will be a good movie, or it can turn into the TV show?
Well, I mean, everything has to be tested. I think the times when you sit, I mean, this romantic notion that anyone sits at the desk and then they think about something and then they write it down, or like they do a graphic and then they put it in the world, and that's over. I mean, it's like, it's all data. I mean, it's all, everything has to be data reflected if you want to be successful. I think, not the creative process. That's where I would disagree. Yeah. I mean, I would totally say, let's at best put the creator into the ivory tower. They do that. But once it's there, once the creative product is there, I think everything, you just have to data test it. Otherwise, you just burn a lot of money, and you just can't compete. I mean, it's just impossible. I mean, because, for example, one of the communication agencies that works for us, they work for Mercedes-Benz. And if you see that, then you know why that is so. Because companies like that, they monitor in real time on all 190 territories in this world the communication of everyone on the brand, and they translate it with AI into positive, medium, negative, and they, on the same day, crank out like Twitter, Facebook, social media campaigns that reflect the notion of what's been said. And you just can't compete if you don't rely on data. I think it's impossible in our world.
Yeah, I completely agree. Because, well, you have to benchmark it somehow, and also, that's what I said previously. Well, like we said, the content creator, the idea, you can't make creativity with data. That's not going to happen. But you can give insights from the data and try to help the creativity or give some guide points. But it's mandatory because, well, in the end, it's just business.
We talked about it before. To test your idea is really to identify your target and then go to them and ask them. I was in Ghent at this Connext 1 week ago, and then it was a producer for Skam, the Norwegian youth series, presenting, and it was super interesting. And I identified that the NRK, the public broadcaster in Norway, they had really lost this group of young people, 16 to 17 years of age. And they really went into it, and they asked them about what would you like to see? I mean, it's not cool to watch television. It's not, I mean, it was many things about not being cool, and it was the wrong language and many things. And what they learned is, and they came back and they said, we like to deal with our fears. We like to deal with subject that matters to us, not that grown-up people are telling us to do. And they really sort of followed exactly what the target group wanted to see. And out of this, now Skam is a massive success globally. And also it communicates with, it's very web-oriented, because everything goes through mobile and everything. I mean, so this is how they communicate, and it's really SMS, and I mean, it's the YouTube, it's everything. And someone put it together very nicely and said that the heart of the battle for the future of reaching the audience is the web. That's where it happens. You have to be there, and you have to understand it.
Yeah, I would agree that data is hugely important, but I think lest we turn this into maybe a slightly depressing tech-based panel, I do want to echo what was said in the last one. Really, as a filmmaker, you should go out and tell the story you want to tell. If you show up with enough passion, you can find a way to get it in front of people. That being said, though, I think to touch upon another issue from the last panel is you should be showing up and doing that work. You need to be putting your film out there digitally and ensuring that you're the one who's collecting as much data as possible about its distribution. If you're going to build a sustainable career as a filmmaker, you need to know who's excited about watching your stuff. So I'm not necessarily suggesting using the focus group style model of testing things out, but I definitely, after you've made your passion project, make sure there's some sort of a follow-up plan so that you can collect information about the audience that it's resonating with, what your sales agent is doing, where you're getting traction for international deals, so you can replicate that in the future with additional films you'd like to make. But to go back to the original question, I want to flip it slightly from a different aspect of tech. So the original question was, how do you know whether something ought to be series, film? I think one of the really exciting things about technology and the web is what even is a film or a series is something that's changing pretty rapidly. Suddenly there's interest in short-form content. You've got the studios investing huge in Quibi. It's a new startup that hasn't come to market yet, but it's founded by a couple of former Disney execs, and they're interested in this bite-sized, serialized content. Now, it's a very different experience than probably what we're used to. It's not content that's intended to screen in a cinema. It's just for somebody to watch on their phone. But I think it opens up, technology potentially paves the way to open up huge new story telling possibilities to anybody who's willing to embrace them. So that's something that I would be on the lookout as filmmakers who might not be beholden to the half-hour or hour-long format in the future, might be able to explore some interesting alternatives made possible by new distribution channels.
Okay, you know your audience. What are the most popular genders? Then I ask a very simple question in the platforms.
Well, I mean, with our platforms, and that's actually one thing that I would that we target. I mean, like normally one says there's more male than female users in video on demand. If it comes to a more high quality, more European, more art house leaning audience, you will see that there's a change in that. So, for example, with our independent movie platform, Realize.de, we have a much higher degree of female users than male, which makes sense because the classical, like hard-knuckle genres, male genres like action, war, you know, that's not really indie style, partly because people can't even afford to produce it. So, so I think it's some mix that you can already draw from theatrical. I mean, we used to run theaters, and there's actually a lot of structures or a lot of thinking to be learned from theatrical operation, because in theatrical operation it is a known fact that the decision maker on visits to the art house movie theaters is actually in a couple, it's much more the female part of a couple than a male. So I think in terms of gender, that's definitely an issue. In terms of age, I mean, we are targeting 25 and up, partly because, you know, the youngsters possibly don't have the, you know, they don't have much on their credit card, you know, but that might change. And then, of course, you know, for us, it's the metropolitan audiences. It's what's interesting, and that's actually one thing that ties into the initial question, like how do I get my content out there? I would say the art house audience, at least in Germany, and that's a pretty big market, and France is another big market, the art house audience often prefers subtitles to dubs. And that totally works in the favor of independent filmmaking or independent storytelling or independent producing, because a lot of content does not travel just because of that, just because it does not have a dub. Latvian production cannot really gain traction in the German mainstream market or the French mainstream market or the Spanish mainstream market if it does not have a dub. So there's two ways to go. I mean, either, which I personally feel I would recommend the funders to think about, is like if you give someone a couple of million euro to produce something, then demand that they do a dub. I mean, it's only 100,000 euro for like the 4 main languages. You should definitely have that, and then just like give them another 50,000 euro and say, and now make like subtitles for all 30 European countries. Because it always bothers me, and I always wonder, why do funders and why do producers, when they produce something, they don't actually produce a product. What they produce is raw material. Because if you produce in Latvian or in Danish or in Dutch, you only have the raw product. You only have the raw material. You don't have a product because, like, I can't see it because I don't speak your language. So please, like, invest the 300 euro in subtitling per language or a couple of those dubs, and there you are. There you are sellable. I mean, that's like one of the main points. Localization. I mean, give us a product as distributors and just don't give us the raw material and say, well, you deal with it. So that's one thing.
About shortcut, yes.
I understand, because we localize ourselves. Most of the content comes from...
And it's so easy. I mean, like, it's like people think, like, people still of the belief, like, a subtitle is going to be like 3,000 euro. But honestly, I mean, I hate to say it, I had a bit of work to do while some people were talking here, and I was sitting there, so I was working, and I actually translated a 40-page French balance sheet and I don't speak French, from a PDF to a document into AI-controlled translator, back into Word, back into PDF in 5 minutes. And I'm sure my bank's going to love it. So same goes for subtitles. I mean, in-house, we can do it for 100 euros, so it's like 4 work hours. So maybe you want to outsource it, then it's 300 euro. But these times where you feel like each subtitle is like 3,000 euros, so man, it's a thing of the past. I mean, like just Google, and you'll find all those services that do it for a couple €100.
Okay, but back to the question about the genres and what's most watchable. Of course, for you, art house is a niche.
Nah, I hate the word niche.
No.
It's like, who says it's a niche? You know, it's those looking down. Oh man, like it's a niche. You know, it's like it's dust. You know, but it's not. It's a segment, and 20%. Our niche is 400 million in revenue. You want to call that a niche? I mean, it's not.
Okay, sorry. It's a segment. For example, in smaller countries, where in Latvia, where we have 2 million people, we wouldn't call it even a niche.
Yeah, I do. I actually made my math. I actually thought. I was going here and I thought, like, well, what if I want to launch a service in Latvia? And then I calculated. Okay, it's a 40th of the German population, so I divide the German revenue by 40, and then I know the Latvian revenue, and then I divide it by 5, then I know the art house revenue, and I actually came up with approximately 10 million. So now you could say if I grab 10%, then I have 1 million. That's not enough. So if I want to make 2 million in revenue, that would be enough to be profitable. Then I have to move art house up just a notch, like from 20% to 30%, and there I have a good structure. I still don't have to bow to mainstream, I think.
Let's agree to disagree.
Well, let's disagree. It's good.
But the main, for example, the main drivers for our platform, and I think in all the Latvian platforms, is local content. Local content. This is what drives new subscribers, drives people. People really watch it. Mainstream is fine. When you don't have anything to watch, you watch some mainstream, some Marvel movies, some others, some Chernobyl. Chernobyl, okay, it was a different case. It was really skyrocketed in summer. But yeah, the mainstream content is nice, but that what drives is local, and I think that. I think this could be the case in a lot of countries, and I think that movie makers and movie producers just have to talk to their local friendly VOD service and maybe think about some partnerships, because it doesn't always mean if you go with a VOD service then the big screens are cut out or whatever. There are a lot of different models.
Yeah, but if you produce mainstreamish Latvian content, it won't travel. I mean, you do like a Latvian comedy. I mean, the sales ends at the border, doesn't it?
Well, we have some cases in Latvia that it's a little bit different, but in most cases, probably.
Yes, Michael. Could you be specific about the topic, like genders? As a sales agent, what can you say about most popular genres in platforms?
What works, you mean? Yeah. For features or for what I can say, what is more challenging is definitely local comedy and coming of age. Films with from Scandinavia, it has been for many years Nordic crime, both for features and TV series, and that is kind of the brand, and it's even called Nordic noir, Nordic thrillers. So this is quite often the first question buyers give me. Okay, what do you have of new Nordic crime? Sometimes they even ask, I mean, do you have some Danish films? But now it's more even. I mean, so it comes from most of the Nordic countries. And so I think and then also, of course, I mean, they're asking a lot about TV series. I mean, TV is so big. I mean, it's really sort of transforming. So all these Nordic crime features that came already in the 90s, I mean, they are now all today all TV series. And yeah.
Are the short films of any interest for sales company, like short format? Because at the beginning of digitalization, there was opinion that they are good to watch in the panels or even in mobile phones, like these 10-minute films that students make and so on and so on. What about shorts?
I never been working really with shorts. Short film, the classic way, is of course a good entry for young filmmakers to show themselves and their talent. Now there are new possibilities, of course, with web series, everything that goes from just a few minutes to maybe 15 minutes, and I think that has a huge potential for the near future. Well, it's already here, actually, and but it's just to find the right ideas and the right sort of style and language for it. But that is definitely just go and ask the audience. Go ask those who you like to communicate with, because they will give you answers, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, one of the answers, I mean, after all, I mean, I think at least video on demand, I can't really sell for anything else, but I mean, video on demand is about, it's about entertainment. I mean, art house or high quality, it's still about entertainment. So, and entertainment is about like you sitting down on the couch watching something either alone or with a couple of friends or so. And I think with shorts, it's, I mean, the nice thing about home video or like about video on demand is that it allows you to be the master of your own time. I mean, like if you're like the movie theater, like you know, it starts at 8 and it's at 10, so you have to say like, do I have enough time? And even I would argue the theatrical film, you know, to me the cinematic film for VOD is kind of a crutch. I mean, it's how it started, iTunes just mimicking a video store. But it's not really the right format for like video on demand, because sometimes I have 3 hours to spare on a rainy Sunday. Sometimes I have half an hour to spare on a busy Monday. So the organic form is really series. There, like short film ties in, but it needs to. We still have to find a good way of how to present short film, because on our help desk, I often have this thing that people say, oh, I spent 15 minutes looking for a film, then I found one, then I started watching it, oh man, and then it was over in 5 minutes. I didn't realize it was short, you know. So people get angered. So I think, you know, transactionally, of course, like you can't sell a single short. Yeah. That is not possible. I mean, I always find it funny that like transactional services have a lot of shorts, because I mean, I swear, I mean, no one buys them ever. So it's just not possible. I mean, who's going to spend
only by mistake?
By mistake, yeah, that's true. But I think like shorts are totally valid. Like we, for example, with our indie platform, we work with a lot of the German film schools, and so they have a great output. They have great talent. It's a great calling card. It's really fun. But still, we need a better format of how to present shorts to make them really attractive in the digital world. I don't think we have found it yet.
Or mini series, not short.
Huh?
Or mini series, just to make a bigger piece in a smaller amount of time.
Well, mini-series, I mean, there's two. I mean, there's web series that have shorter minutes per episode, and there's mini-series that have limited amount of episodes, but normally longer episodes. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess there's an audience for anything, but in some ways, I feel the serial format is the most suitable format for like video on demand. And there, I just coming back to Nordic Noir, because and coming back to the gender actually, because like with someone I was actually joking this at lunch about the fact like how many films can you still take that start with a dead woman being splattered on the kitchen floor, radio is still running, birds are still tweeting, but the crime has already happened. It's of course a serial killer that either goes by the 10 Commandments or the 7 Sins or whatever driver. I mean, how much of that can you take? You know, I mean, and I thought like, it was so great to hear about the bank, you know, to have a valid story. I mean, a valid story that millions of people were affected by, lost everything, couple gained everything. I mean, there's so many stories. Just I thought, like, just go walking from the hotel to here. You know, I thought, like, yeah, there's just looking at a couple of people. I thought, I'm sure they have an interesting story behind them. Now, like, tweak it a bit, fictional. You know, like sales helping them to really get it out there. It's much more interesting. I mean, I can't take all this stuff anymore. Like the stereotypical, endless, never-ending mainstream boredom. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I totally agree to what you say here. I mean, it's been for quite a while now. I mean, it's too much sometimes with these, not gory, but very dark stories. What I think is coming up now in the near future is, of course, everything about environmental. I mean, the society, how to take care of this planet, and I mean everything is positive stories. And for example, I'm thinking of this Greta effect. I mean, it's coming out of Sweden that everyone are talking about now during the last couple of months at least.
Well, I mean, I don't think the stories don't have to be positive, but they have to have some effect, and I think
edge.
And I think if you look at the output just from film schools, I mean, you can see. I mean, there's so much talent out there. I mean, I think like filmmaking has never been better. Most of us just never have a chance to look at it because it's just not really exposed. And if you would give that talent the next steps to develop, I think it would be good. But I think, again, I mean, I don't want to be too anti-American here, but I think as long as everything, nearly everything that's out there is controlled and is filtered through the American view, then of course in the end, yeah, it's like violence rules. Like you want to get something, well, shoot someone, you know. And for example, we have on this independent platform, we have this joke key word. I mean, you can check it out. It's actually no joke. It's actually a sad joke because we have like 1,500 films. And if you look at the categories, there's like, let's say, women's biographies, and there's history and politics. And then there's one category that no one knows. It's called the edge. And what is the edge? The edge is actually a category that is necessary for us because this category tells our system, do not deliver to Google, do not deliver to Amazon, because it's too crass. You know, we get flagged. So I mean, so yeah, as a European, you know, whatever, like nudity, language, it's out there. But I mean, you can like chainsaw people left and right, and you can send it to Amazon. You know, it's kind of, that's not really our values, I think.
So how do you seek for good stories, for good producers or directors or stories? Yes.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
How do you seek for good stories?
How would you find them necessarily?
How do you find them? Yeah. How do?
I mean, I guess I'm maybe a strange one to answer this question, just because Breaker right now, as a distribution platform, it's still very new, and candidly, it's not something that we definitely want to pursue in the future. We're very interested in that back-end technology, so we may switch over to more of a technology provider than a direct-to-consumer platform. But I think in terms of our limited experience as like a producer and distributor of content, it really does come down to that issue of collaboration that was mentioned earlier. We were very fortunate with a documentary that we produced about blockchain, fittingly enough, sort of an educational tool we could use as a use case for our platform. It's called Trust Machine. Through a connection, we were connected with a mutual friend of ours. We were connected with Alex Winter, the documentary filmmaker, and I think we really lucked out with him as a partner on this film. He understood that there was more to this technology than kind of the dry numbers, but a very strange, bizarre, idiosyncratic story at the heart of the technology. And so to answer the question of how you find good content, I think from the perspective of a producer, at some levels it is largely, there's an element of luck to it. Showing up at the right place at the right time and working hard certainly helps to a great degree. But it's finding those partners that you want to work with and who are competent storytellers, who can find the interesting story to tell there. As a distribution platform, I think it's just about watching a lot of stuff. It's attending events like this in order to find stories that are maybe a little bit more off the beaten path, but could be quite interesting if they were curated and put into the spotlight.
For me, it's traveling and attending these different film co-production events where they present in production at early stage, work in progress, and then catch up with the producer and the writer and where the idea come from as early as possible. So I was then in Ghent like 1 week ago. I was at the Finnish Film Affairs like a month ago. I mean, so many countries, they have these sort of once a year where they present their projects. So this is really super important. And then along the way, of course, there is a network that is being built. And then some people come to you, and sometimes you read something, or you even have an idea, and then you can present it to someone who you believe can be interested. So one thing gives the other.
In content? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I personally feel like festivals, I mean, to me, are they a bit of waste of time? You know, how many films can you watch? Just 3 or 4 a day or so. So I say I mean, there's so much talent out there. So, I mean, I would say just send a screener link. I mean, in some ways for all the talent, I would say, I mean, just make use of the fact that there's like so many platforms, you know, just learn to play them, you know, just give us the right material. Don't be so hapless and have no clue what we need. I mean, like if we give you a spec sheet, just work it off and then deliver it, because you can be assured that that's the specs that you can deliver to hundreds of platforms. And again, it's only numbers. I mean, all we deal in is like is micro business. So let's say it's €2 here, €2 there. So just like have 100 platforms. They give you measly revenue of, let's say, €20 a month, but that's like €2,000. So there's €24,000 a year. So I mean, that's better than nothing. And the other thing is, money-wise, I would say, I mean, start at the inception of your film, because at least in Germany, I feel a lot of independent filmmakers, they use crowdfunding as a part of their funding, their finance portfolio. And with crowdfunding, you have the first 1,000 totally devoted ambassadors of your cause, and they will travel all the way through all the windows, theatrical, physical, digital, always making that film known. And a lot of these films are really successful because they have that core base of 1,000 people that have invested their €5 or €10 and they promote it. So I can highly recommend crowdfunding as a kickoff to a good project.
And at this particular moment, we have to wrap up, and if there is some question, keep it to yourself, because we are out of time, and you can Google it afterwards. Or, of course, we can do a very nice discussion in the networking part, because now, ladies and gentlemen, we have precisely 4 zeros on the screen, which means the time is up, and we have to go forward, and this is the moment when we give a huge applause, which are data-based applause to our people here. Thank you. Thank you very much. All of you were very passionate.